Welcome to the Rich Woman Rising podcast. I'm your host, Eloise Tomkins, and I'm a money coach and psychologist helping women in business to make more money in a way that feels good so that they can have a business that's regulated and lets them keep the money that they're making. Today, actually, no, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share the Fire and Fortune Wealth Activation event that I'm hosting because I think you might enjoy this. If you can relate to knowing that you are the one holding yourself back from making more money, and yes, I know that sounds confronting, but hear me out. I promise this is going somewhere because often we know that we are the one that's kind of somehow holding ourselves back. We don't know how, we don't know why. We can see this pattern kind of playing out in some way, shape, or form, but we still find ourselves stuck in it. And a lot of women will kind of describe it as feeling as though they've got one foot on the accelerator and the other on the brake when it comes to making money. They will have a successful launch, they'll raise their prices, they'll feel good, and then they'll unintentionally sabotage it by saying yes to a client when they could see the red flags waving and they're like, crap, why did I do that? And they find themselves in this constant push pull, making money, pulling back, making money, pulling back, and kind of keeping themselves in this financial air quote comfort zone because it's not particularly comfortable, but it's comfortable to your nervous system. So if you want to understand why you do that and how you can break free of that, then that is exactly why I have created Fire and Fortune, the 3 day, or I don't want to say 3 day because it's not 3 days, it's 3 sessions over 3 days, where we unpack that. It's $27. The link is in the show notes. So come along if that sounds like it's relevant to you. I would love to see you there. And today's episode, I want to tell you something that might piss a few people off, but I'm going to go there. I don't care because it needs to be said. You know how you have been told by well-meaning people, oh gosh, they're so well-meaning, but my God, does it grate my gears when people say, trust your gut, listen to your intuition. Well, I hate to tell you this, but you have been lied to. Not intentionally, because like I said, well-meaning. However, those stories are keeping you stuck. Here's what I mean. We make business decisions that feel right, that feel good to us. Or maybe something feels off. We can't quite pinpoint it, but we're like, oh, something feels off. I'm not going to do it. For example, maybe you know that you want to raise your prices, but every time you go to do it, something just gets in the way. Oh, it's my partner's birthday, and oh, there's just too much going on. I don't have time to deal with this. I'll do it next week. And then next week becomes next month. And then next month becomes 6 months. And you have successfully avoided it. Or maybe you don't launch the program because you just don't have a good feeling about it. Or you don't put yourself out there because you don't want to be visible because you're not ready. You need to get another qualification first. And it feels good in a sense. There's something about that that feels reassuring. Like, okay, well, I was listening to my intuition, I was following my gut, makes sense. I'm doing the right thing. And all of the personal development gurus, that's what they tell you. Follow your intuition, let it be, feel the fear and do it anyway. Ugh, but as my psychologist brain wants to let you know, this is not actually you trusting yourself. Not trusting yourself, okay? And the reason for that is because when we think about where that emotion is that's kind of telling you, oh, don't do it, oh, it's not the right time, it is usually in our stomach, it is usually in our chest, it is usually in our throat. We have not in our stomach, maybe where our heart's beating faster, or maybe we get a headache when we think about it, and we get tension in our shoulders. And then we interpret that as no, no. And so then what we do, we don't do it. We feel good. But do you know what we're actually listening to? All of that is fear. So when we are trusting our intuition based on those signals that our body is giving us, that is fear or anxiety, however, varying on that spectrum. But we have told ourselves that it's okay. It's our intuition. We can listen to it because that's what we're meant to do. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. And that's what keeps us stuck exactly where we are and why we don't move forward. It sounds counterintuitive. Hear me out. I promise you I will explain. Let me share a bit of a client story with you, though, to give you a bit of a sense as to what I mean. Well, actually, it wasn't a client story. It was someone that I met. I think I might have spoken about it on the podcast before. I can't remember. I just remember, gosh, this is years ago. And they said, my business is just not a six-figure business. They ran a coaching business. And they were doing similar work to me in the sense of using like somatic-based work. They were doing EMDR. And they kept hitting an income ceiling. Every time they got to between $94,000 to $96,000, it would cap consistently. And it happened for years. I think she said about 7 years. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's happening? Like that doesn't get you to the six-figure mark because you really wanted to get over six figures. She's like, well, I just don't think that my business is a six-figure business. I just don't think that it's possible. I was like, okay, me being me, I was a little bit curious and, delved into it just a little more. And I was like, because I wanted to understand why, like what was going on. And it turns out that every time she would get to kind of the end of the financial year and she'd be making her way to that $94,000 to $96,000 mark, her marketing would slow down. Her clients would wind up. She wouldn't have new clients on the horizon because she's like, well, I've hit my limit. Here we are. And so she would unknowingly keep repeating the pattern, which is why her business was not a six-figure business. Had she have kept up with her marketing, then she would have crossed over that six-figure threshold easily. But she didn't because she was listening to something in her body that was saying, oh, well, it's time to slow down now. And she was using that as her kind of guiding wisdom rather than having a bit more critical thinking about what her body was telling her. And so she thought that was really smart and wise. And she thought that she was trusting herself. But what her nervous system was actually shouting at her was, this is dangerous. This doesn't feel safe. Crossing over that six-figure threshold, there's something about that feels really scary. Don't do it. So when we have been told things like trust your gut, listen to your intuition, listen to your inner voice, if it feels right, don't do it. And there's probably more that you can think of that people have told you. That advice, it's not wrong. Let me just be clear, that advice isn't wrong. It's actually really good advice. The problem is nobody taught us how to tell the difference between our intuition and like our actual intuition versus our fear response. And so when we're making decisions based on this so-called intuition, but it's actually fear, God, no wonder we're getting confused. No wonder we're frustrated that we're stuck because we think we're doing the right thing. But remember, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, your nervous system's one job is to keep you alive. That is it. It doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care about your wealth. It doesn't care about you being fulfilled either. It just wants you alive. So to your nervous system, staying exactly where you are actually feels a lot safer than making more money. Staying where you are feels so much more safer than putting your face all over Instagram and having an asshole comment on your video and say something nasty. Staying exactly where you are feels so much more comfortable than changing, which is why some people love to hold on to this idea of, well, I am listening to my intuition. No. Mm-mm. I mean, you can, great. But if you're stuck and you're not changing or you're not going where you want to go, then maybe it's time to examine why. And that's why when you think about doing something that does feel a little bit scary, like raising your prices or having a difficult conversation with a client about money or chasing up that unpaid invoice or opening your bank balance, for example, your nervous system freaks out because it's got this association between money and danger. And obviously, logically, this is not true, right? And this is where people can get a little bit, oh gosh, what's the word? Like, not confused, but they're like, well, it doesn't know because I want to make more money. I'm like, yes, your conscious brain, the 5% part of your brain wants you to make more money. Absolutely. But the 95% part of your brain, your nervous system, your subconscious, no, they don't care. They don't want you to make more money. They just want you to stay alive and safe. That is literally their job. So that is why we can often get stuck between intuition and that fear response. So when we have, I guess, our that fear, I guess, I was trying to think of what to call it, but when we do have that fear response, we think it's intuition. It can sound so fucking logical. Like it's ridiculous how logical it sounds, and really fascinates me when I hear it because it sounds just logical. It makes so much sense, except it doesn't. But it like the way that we tell ourselves about it, it just makes so much sense. For example, I speak to women all the time about money. It's my job. And I hear it in so many conversations. Oh, yeah, I really want to be able to make more money. But if I were to make more money, then I'd have to change my business model. And if I change my business model, I would have to pull back on how many clients I'm seeing, which would reduce my income in the here and now, which means that I wouldn't be able to pay my current expenses. So I'll just think about it next year. On the surface, that sounds so logical, right? Because you hear that and you go, oh, yeah, well, that kind of tracks. Cool. You need to pay your bills. Yeah, of course you need to be able to afford your bills. Sure. What they don't tell you is that they've got 100K saved in their bank account for a rainy day that they haven't touched in years because they're scared that if they spend that money, then everything's just going to boop, go to shit and they're going to be financially screwed. So yeah, it tracks on the one hand, but on the other hand, we don't have the full story. And fear is really good at creating logic. Or when we have this thing like this kind of belief that says, mm, something just doesn't feel right about this. I don't know, like I want to go into that investor meeting and ask for funding. But I don't know, there's just something that doesn't feel right about it. So, what we interpret that to mean is, well, it must be wrong because something doesn't feel right. Therefore, I'm not going to do it. Just, no, it doesn't feel good to me. But what if the reason that it doesn't feel good is because you haven't ever been in that situation before? So, of course, it's not going to feel right because you've never done it before. And that's a very normal response to an unfamiliar situation. So, again, fear sounds really logical. Now, I'm going to go on a little side tangent because I obviously am a psychologist. I've done a lot of work in the mental health space, and I used to, early in my career, do some work with clients who were experiencing delusions. And I remember when I first started working with people who were experiencing delusions, they would say have some interesting beliefs um, that were not founded in reality. But when they would say them, my goodness, I tell you what, I was like, oh my gosh, is this true? And I remember being not confused, but like just like I I can't tell that this isn't true because they believe it so strongly. The reason that I'm sharing this with you is because even though it wasn't their reality, sorry, it wasn't my reality, it was their reality. And to them, it was true. It just felt so true. And I can't share, obviously the things that they spoke about for confidentiality reasons, but there was some really interesting stuff that would come out and they like 100% believed it. And that's exactly how our fear response kind of comes out when we're trying to work through what is our intuition. It feels true, it feels logical, it feels right. And so we don't even really think to question it because we're just like, okay. Now, obviously, I'm comparing delusion and fear, and they're not the same thing. Just to be clear on that, I'm not comparing apples and apples. They are two very different things. But I just thought it was an interesting example to share because we do, because it's not just a belief to us where we can go, oh, yeah, that's just fear. Like, I'm wanting to acknowledge that I understand how deep the fear response runs, and it's not just like a little flick of the switch to go, oh, yeah, okay, that's just fear. I'll just not listen to that. If it were that easy, oh my goodness, I would be out of a job, which I would love to be because that would hopefully help the world be a much better place. But here we are. But the problem is, as well, is that sometimes the fear voice is right about the facts as well, which means that it can be tricky sometimes to distinguish whether it's a legit fear or whether it's something that you need to listen to. I know it's sounding doom and gloom at the moment, but I promise we're getting somewhere, okay? There is a purpose because you can never be fully prepared. You're never going to have everything quite right. You are never going to be 100% ready to launch, ready to increase your prices, ready to do the thing. Maybe you could wait a little bit longer, sure. But here's what the fear voice doesn't tell you is that you can still do that and be able to land safely on the other side. You have that resilience, you have that capacity. But our brain will find any information to keep us looking for evidence that we shouldn't do it. So it's crazy how uh, strong this is and how logical it sounds to us. So, what we want to start to do now is to be able to tell the difference. And the way that we do that is by understanding our nervous system. And what do I mean by that? Well, our nervous system communicates to us through our body. It communicates through how we feel. Information comes in through our body. And then what happens is our brain interprets that and spits out a meaning, which is where our thoughts come into it. But what we do is we hear the thoughts first and then assume that that must be true and the sensation is bad. And maybe it was the first time that we experienced it. For example, if we were a kid and we witnessed our parents screaming about money and we were only little and we ran into our room to hide, that was scary. Of course it was. But now we're having that same reaction as an adult and we don't need to feel that same fear anymore. But it's been stored as a blueprint in our body, and we are responding that same way as we did when we were a kid to something that we don't need to anymore because we're just making that assumption off that response. So, what we want to be able to do is acknowledge, yeah, okay, I'm having this response in my body. and put a name to it. Being able to say, oh, okay, yeah, this is fear. This is anxiety. Okay, wow. All right, I've got a name for you now. Have a little bit of curiosity for what's going on in our body because so often we feel it. We want to get rid of that feeling because it feels a bit icky and uncomfortable. We just want to be like, oh, go away. But the beauty comes in being able to sit with that discomfort, being able to acknowledge, being able to offer some compassion to it. Because when your body's having a stress response, of course, we want to make that stress go away. We don't want it there. But when your nervous system starts to feel safe that you are going to listen to it when things are happening, then it starts to shift. You can make different choices. So it's not an overnight thing. And that's okay. I think that's okay for it not to be an overnight thing. But it's also not okay to let fear be in the driver's seat and call it intuition, because that's just going to keep holding you back. It's actually one of my favorite things to kind of talk to people about because otherwise we just keep repeating the same money pattern over and over and over. And fear will congratulate you for doing that. Fear will reward you and say, well done. You did the right thing. It'll tell you that you're being wise, careful, responsible, well done, gold star. But what you're actually being is just broke, stuck, or playing so far below your potential that, you know, it hurts because you know that this is more capable in there. So when you have that feeling in there, then you can, and are starting to acknowledge it, then you can start to work out, okay, what am I going to do with it? Rather than what we're doing at the moment, which is often blindly following along with it. And I used to do this so often. Like I used to just blindly follow my emotional responses with no idea what the heck they were communicating to me. No idea. And I mean, gosh, that led me to a life of absolute misery. I was in a career I hated, not psychology. Prior to that, I was a teacher. I hated it, but didn't think I could do anything different because I'd studied teaching and I should just do it. Even though my intuition was telling me, stop being a teacher. You're not good at it. You hate it. Do something else. But I didn't know how to listen to my intuition. So a couple of things, I guess, to remember is that this isn't a mindset problem, even though you are going to have the thoughts that say, oh, be careful. Oh, are you sure you're ready? Are you sure you really want to do that? Oh, I don't know. This could go wrong. Still not a mindset problem. It is actually a nervous system response. And you can't kind of just decide to trust yourself more. Like, that's not how it works. It's not like, oh, I'm going to trust myself more and jump into the deep end. No, it's not going to happen like that. Your body has to feel safe before your intuition, actual intuition, comes back online. So, when we think about being able to do this from that practical standpoint, we've got the awareness or the acknowledgement and the naming it piece. So, okay, thanks for letting me know that you're here, fear or anxiety. What we then want to be able to do is kind of regulate, pause, and allow ourselves to come back into ourselves so that instead of reacting, we're able to take some space so that we can make a decision that's aligned. And if you have joined the Wealthy as Fuck Vault, which has meditations that come out each month that help you with your nervous system responses to money, you'll know that one of the module or one of the programs in there is breathing or breath work and somatic basics, because I love breathing as a way to ground ourselves, a way to anchor ourselves back into the moment. It's amazing how much we just don't breathe. which is crazy. So we can regulate ourselves by allowing ourselves just to take in a few deep breaths, which I know sounds really simple, but it's underestimated. We can feel our feet on the ground, like literally ground ourselves into the earth. We can move our body for a few minutes, just reconnect back in with our container, ourselves. Those are some like 3 techniques that I really like to do. Because when we do feel overwhelmed, I know sometimes we can like it can feel bigger than us. And I like moving our body or moving my body to kind of bring myself back into my own body container. And then we need to start to learn the difference between the fear voice and that wisdom voice. And that's where it can be tricky because fear is usually this urgent, anxious, uh, logical sounding voice that goes against our goals. And it normally has words in it like, oh, what if? Or you should, or it's too risky in it. And it's kind of like, oh, these are the bad things that could go wrong. Whereas your wisdom voice is calmer, clearer, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, yep, this does feel scary, and I've already considered the risks. It still feels aligned. Or I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but that's okay. That fear voice will try and control the outcomes. It wants to stay in control, whereas the wisdom voice trusts you to navigate whatever comes up from it. And then finally, we want to start small. We don't want to go into making the biggest decision of our lives. First off, we want to start from little tiny micro choices. So we can even do this with things that we already know. Like, what do we want to eat for lunch? Do you want to have banana or an orange with lunch? And learning to tune in and how your body feels around that response can help us start to tune in to our yes and no's, our this feels good, no, that doesn't feel good. And when we can start to build evidence that we can trust ourselves with little things, we can then start to trust ourselves with bigger things like having those difficult money conversations with our clients or asking to raise our rates or whatever it is. Because at some point, the more that you start working towards this, your intuition is going to start guiding you towards things that do feel scary. And we want that because in order to reach your goals, you need to move outside your comfort zone. Fear is going to keep you in your comfort zone, which is why a lot of women don't reach their financial goals. They tell themselves all of these excuses that sound really logical, sound really smart, but in reality, it's just fear holding them back. I don't mean that to sound callous, but what I do want is for you to tease that apart and have a real good, honest chat with yourself because, it doesn't bother me whether you change your financial reality. I want you to, but I can't make you. I can't want it for you. You have to do the work. And doing the work first comes with owning it and being really radically honest, which again is something that not a lot of people will do because that's confronting. And I get it, each to their own. But if you want to reach your goals, this is how you do it. Oh, I'm just noticing my own response to this, like, because it's funny, I get scared talking about this sometimes because it is tough love. And I've been taught, particularly, well, again, as a woman, but also as a psychologist, not to do the tough love, but to let people figure stuff out on their own and, ask the reflective questions and have this psychologist hat on. So I'm like, oh, this is unusual for me. It is a bit more tough lovey than usual. But at the end of the day, I want you to have the resources that you need to create the life that you want. And if this helps you to pull your finger out and take a good hard look at the decisions that you've been making from fear, good, goal accomplished. And if you are sitting here listening to this episode going, no, I'm definitely listening to my intuition, then you're the one that I'm speaking to that needs to pull your finger out, if I'm completely honest. And I say that myself as well, knowing that I still have to check myself daily because I have this fear response too. Money coach, psychologist, yeah, I am. And this also catches me every single day as well. The amount of conversations I've had with my coach, my counselor, where they've lovingly called me out on my own bullshit because I've had my own blinders on. Whew, it's wild because we can't see our own blind spots. And that is why I have created Fire and Fortune because I want to help you uncover what is keeping you stuck. I don't want this to be in the shadows for you anymore. I want you to be able to shine the light and go, oh, this makes sense. I get it. And have the skills to be able to move forward because it's not you that's keeping you stuck. I mean, it is, but it's your nervous system. And it's doing that because it wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you protected. There's a lot of good reasons as to why it's doing it. But now it's time for you to evolve because you can have the best business strategy, the best business idea. But if your nervous system still feels like money is a threat, then it's going to sabotage you every single time, hands down. So here's what I want you to ask yourself this week. When you're making a decision, whether it's what to put on your sandwich, whether it's butter or mayonnaise, chicken or turkey, you can check in with yourself. Am I trusting my wisdom right now or am I trusting my fear? And I know that might sound a little bit ridiculous when you're just making a sandwich, but when we start with those little smaller things, we can learn to pay attention to what our body is doing. And when we can start to notice whether it's tense, tight, or whether it's grounded, open, and at ease, that's how we build that self-trust muscle because you already have this amazing wisdom and intuition inside of you that's going to help you grow your business and make the kind of money that you want. That's already in there. You've just been confusing survival brain with that voice of your inner wisdom and your inner knowing. And now we need to acknowledge, yep, fear, cool, boop, great. And the goal is not to never feel fear, but it is to stop letting fear make the decisions for you. So if this episode has called you out a little, you are feeling a little bit called out, one, good. Two, Fire and Fortune, it is exactly for you. So link is in the bio. Come join. It's $27 and it's 3 sessions over 3 days that are going to be recorded, although attending live is always where the best juice lives. But if you're ready to learn how to start trusting yourselves and not letting fear run everything, you're going to want to be in that room. Until next week, have fun making money in your business. I'll chat to you all soon. All right, bye.